In today's class, I'm going to discuss about the quadrilaterals. So all of you have a fair idea about the quadrilaterals. A four-sided closed figure is known as a quadrilateral. Okay, and you might have been seen and you might have been learned about these kind of quadrilaterals. So let me grab my pen really quick. Okay, you know that this is oops, let me go back. Oh, I have to take the pen again. Right. So you know that this is a rectangle and this one is a square. Don't worry, I'm going to explain in detail in my next slide. And next, this one is a parallelogram. A parallelogram. And this one is a trapezoid. This is a trapezoid. And next one, this one is a rhombus. So what are all these and what is the difference among these? These things I'll explain. Let's go to the whiteboard. My bad. Okay. So let me draw first. Okay. I'm taking a square. You know what a square is? Okay, and I'm drawing another quadrilateral which is next to that, and this is a rhombus. This is a rhombus. I'll explain what is the difference between these two, and some properties are the same and some are different. So what is the difference between the square and a rhombus? I'll explain now. From your elementary school level onwards, you are learning what a square is. Suppose if I'm taking, let's say that 5 inches, let me label this as A, B, and BC is also 5 inches, and next CD is also 5 inches. Oops, CD is 5 inches. And AD is also 5 inches. So you know what a square is. A square is a four-sided figure, or maybe it's a polygon with four sides in which all the sides are equal. And what a rhombus is, what is a rhombus? So here I'm taking 5 inches, and here this is also 5 inches, and this is also 5 inches, and this is also 5 inches. This is P, Q, R, and S. Basically, you see that in both the figures, all the four sides are equal. So, in a square, all the four sides are equal, and in a rhombus, all the four sides are equal. Then, what is the difference between these two? Means you can visualize, you can see that the difference is in a square, all the four corners are at 90 degrees. You see that in a square, all the four corners are at 90 degrees. This is 90, and here the corners are not at 90 degrees. That is the main difference. That's the main difference between a square and a rhombus. Again, I'm repeating, you see that here all the four corners of a square, it is 90 degrees, whereas in a rhombus all the four corners are not 90 degrees. That's the basic difference between a square and a rhombus. And second thing is I'm taking diagonals. What are diagonals means? If I take point A and point B, if I take point A and point B, these two are consecutive vertices. Consecutive. That means one after the other. And if I take A and C, they are non-consecutive. They are non-consecutive. And let me join A and C. Let me join A and C. And B and D. This is how the diagonals are formed. And look at the diagonals in rhombus. So P and Q are consecutive, but P and R are non-consecutive. then QR, they are side by side, but Q and S, they are non-consecutive. We call these as diagonals. We call these as, this one is called as a diagonal. Okay. Now, let's look at the length of diagonals. In a square, AC and BD, the length of AC and length of BD, these two are equal. That means diagonals are equal in length in a square, and in a rhombus, PR and QS, you see that one is short and one is long. They are not equal. So the diagonals of a rhombus are not equal. So what are same means, in a square all the four sides are equal, in a rhombus all the four sides are equal. And what are the differences means, in a square all the four corners are at 90 degrees, in a rhombus all the four corners are not at 90 degrees. And the second difference is, in a square diagonals are equal in measure, but in a rhombus the diagonals are not equal. Okay, so let's go to the next page. And just now we discussed about the difference between a square and a rhombus. And now let's look at a rectangle and a parallelogram. So both are having one similarity, not one, a couple of similarities, and there are some differences too, just like rhombus and a square. Rhombus and a square. Now, let me label them as, say, this is A, B, C, D, P, Q, R, S. Let me give some numbers. Let me assign some numbers. Say that this is 8 inches, 8 inches. You know that in a rectangle, opposite sides are equal. Even in a parallelogram also, the opposite sides are equal. The opposite sides are equal. That's the same property. This property is same for both. Then what is the difference means, just like the previous, that is a rhombus and square, I see that in a rectangle, my bad, I forgot to write this one. This is a rectangle. In a rectangle, all the four corners are at 90 degrees, and in a parallelogram, the corners are not at 90 degrees. That's the basic difference. In a rectangle, all the four corners are at 90 degrees, whereas in a parallelogram, all the four corners are not at 90 degrees. I hope you remember that the little square indicates that 90 degrees. So the four corners are not at 90 degrees. So that's the basic difference between a rectangle and a parallelogram. Okay. So in today's class, let's talk about the properties of parallelogram, because most of these points will be repeated for rest, like a rectangle, square, rhombus, etc. So point number one is, a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. Both the pairs of opposite sides are parallel. That means here AB is parallel to DC, and also AB equals to DC. Okay, and the other pair AD is parallel to BC. I repeat, AB is parallel to DC, and also AB equal to DC. And second point is, you see that I'm taking this line, and its opposite one, that is BC. Here AD is parallel to BC, and AD equals to BC. So opposite sides of a parallelogram are always equal. Okay, let's go to next page to make use of these properties. Okay, so I see that you are asked to find the value of x and y. So here 2x is given and here 20 is given. We know that in a parallelogram, so let me write the property first. In a parallelogram, opposite sides are equal. Opposite sides are equal. Therefore, here I see that AB and DC, these two are equal. Therefore, let me write that AB equals to DC or CD. AB equals to CD. Please remember, in a parallelogram, opposite sides are equal. Therefore, 2x equals to 20. Then, I hope you remember, there is an invisible multiplication sign between 2 and x, that is between constant and variable. Therefore, the inverse operation of multiplication is division by 2 on both the sides. Therefore, 2 over 2, that gives me 1, x 20 over 2, that is equals to 10. Therefore, the value of x equals to 10. And next, the other pair, which is BC and AD, I know that in a parallelogram, opposite sides are equal. I'm taking the same point. In a parallelogram, opposite sides are equal. Therefore, AD equals to BC or BC equals to AD. It is one and same. Now, let me plug in the values. BC is given as 3y. AD is given as 24. Then don't forget, there is an invisible multiplication sign between the number and the letter, I say that constant and the variable. Therefore, the inverse operation of multiplication is a division by 3 on both the sides. After the cancellation, 24 divided by 3, that gives me y equals to 8. Okay. Then, any questions on this? If you have any questions, please send an email. So this is how we found the value of x and y by using the property of a parallelogram. In a parallelogram, opposite sides are equal, by using that. Okay, next, the second property. Opposite angles of a parallelogram are equal. Guys, please do remember that in a parallelogram, opposite angles are equal, which means angle A equals to angle C and angle B equals to angle B equals to angle D. Angle B equals to angle D. Anyhow, in this question, the question is not properly designed, so just I'm making some changes. Let me extend that. Okay, let me extend this one. Let me write as this one and solve for x, y, and also find angle B. Just I extended this one. First of all, here we know that opposite angles of a parallelogram are equal. Opposite angles of a parallelogram are equal. Therefore, I can say that angle A equals to angle C. Therefore, the value of A is given as 120 degrees. The value of C is given as y. Therefore, y equals to 120 degrees. Or else I can say that angle C equals to 120 degrees. Because you know, angle A and angle C, you see that these two are opposite angles. Therefore, A equals to C. Then how to figure out the value of x, that I'll explain in my next question. Here we know that angle B equals to angle D, because I see that angle B and angle D, these two are opposite angles. Don't forget that in a parallelogram, opposite angles of opposite angles of a parallelogram are equal. Don't forget this concept. Therefore, B equals to D. Therefore, angle B equals to the value of D. I don't know. It is given as 5x. Anyhow, how to figure out the value of x? Oh, here it is given, solve for x2. Well, I'll explain. So angle B equals to 5x. So this part we are done, and let me make use of a point which is written in the next page. I'll come back to this page, don't worry. Here it is given that consecutive angles. What are consecutive angles means? What are consecutive angles means? It's not a rocket science. Consecutive angles means nothing but if I take angle A and angle B, these two are next to each other. I call them as consecutive angles. If I take, say, angle B and angle C, they are next to each other. I call them as consecutive angles. Likewise, C and D, these are consecutive angles which are next to each other, and so on. D and A, these are next to each other. Therefore, these are also consecutive angles. So, consecutive angles of a parallelogram are supplementary. Supplementary means the sum is equals to 180 degrees. 180 degrees. You know how we got this point? Probably you might be knowing this concept. Let's say that two lines are drawn, two parallel lines are given to you. Let's say that, let me draw parallel lines. Let me draw parallel lines, and say that this is the transversal. This is the transversal. While learning the concept of parallel lines, I hope you do remember that. Angles on the same side of the transversal, the sum is equals to 180. The sum is equals to 180. Right? In fact, we are taking the same part. Just if I, let me not erase this one. Okay. Okay, so let me take this part, let me take away this part, and you see that some part of a parallelogram, you see that, right? So if I take this one, so angle A plus angle B equals to 180. So please do remember, sum of consecutive angles of a parallelogram equals to 180. This is based on the parallel lines concept. I hope you remember this one. Okay, so now it is a part of a parallelogram. You see that then sum of these two equals to 180 degrees. Now let's go back to the previous page. So keeping that one in view, please don't forget the sum of consecutive angles equals to 180. Therefore, angle A plus angle D equals to 180. The same thing, let me copy here. That is sum of consecutive angles of a parallelogram of a parallel symbol GM parallelogram equals to 180 degrees. Therefore, let me take angle A plus angle D equals to 180 degrees, and let me plug in the values. A is 120, D is 5x equals to 180 degrees. You know how to isolate this part, how to isolate the variable. So let me take away 120, which is the inverse operation. So when I perform this one, 120 gets cancelled. So 5x equals to 60 degrees. Then 5 times x is 60. So, if there is no sign between 5 and x, there is an invisible multiplication. And the inverse operation of multiplication is division by 5 on both the sides. Therefore, the value of x equals to 60 divided by 5. That gives me the value of x is 12. Therefore, x is 12. So I found x and I found y. Yeah, y is 120, and find d. These are already mentioned 5x. and find angle B. Already B is also mentioned that it is 5x. So if you want, what is the value of angle D means it is 5x. So 5 times x is 12. So that gives me 60 degrees. I know that angle B and angle D, these two are opposite angles of a quadrilateral. Therefore, angle B equals to angle D, because opposite angles of a quadrilateral are equal. Therefore, angle B is also 60 degrees. Okay. Now, any questions on this? Well, as every time I say that if you have any questions, feel free to send an email. Let's jump to the next one. Already we discussed this point, that is the third property is consecutive angles of a parallelogram are supplementary or sum of the adjacent angles, that is 180 degrees. So in this question, you are asked to find a measure of angle A is given as 115, find measure of B. So let's focus on first angle B. So B is here. I know that consecutive angles means sum of these two angles, that makes 180 degrees. So let me write that sum of consecutive angles of a parallelogram equals to 180 degrees. So here angle A plus angle B equals to 180 degrees. So what is the value of A? 115 plus the value of B is not known, equals to 180 degrees. Here onwards it's pretty easy. You know that we have to go for inverse operation. So 115, take away this one, angle B equals to 65. Okay, if you want, you can make use of calculator to check the answer. Angle B is 65 degrees. Well, I'm done with B. Then how to find C means don't forget, in a parallelogram the opposite angles are equal. Therefore, angle A equals to angle C. So let me write that in a parallelogram. This is parallel lines and parallelogram. Opposite angles are equal. Therefore, angle A equals to C, and I know that angle A is 115, therefore angle C is also 115 degrees. By the same time, angle B equals to angle D. Let me show on the diagram. Angle B and angle D, these two are opposite. Right? Therefore, angle B equals to angle D. Therefore, just now I figured it out. Let me take this one. So the value of B is taken from here. Therefore, okay, so the value of B is 65 degrees. Therefore, the value of angle D is also 65. I found B, I found C, I found D. Okay. Then any questions on this? So if you can understand the properties of parallelograms, like opposite angles are equal, opposite sides are equal, and sum of consecutive angles means the adjacent, not adjacent, that means angles which are next to each other, I would say neighboring angles. Sum of those angles is equals to 180 degrees. So if these properties, if you can understand, the same properties you can implement for a rectangle, a square, and a rhombus too. Okay. Let's go to the next property. The next property says that in a parallelogram, the diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. So let me write the property bisect each other. So bisect each other means I don't know what is the length of AC. Let me assume that this diagonal of the parallelogram, let me assume that it is 8 inches. If it is 8 inches, now AC and BD, they are intersecting at one point. Let me name this point as P, point P. Let me assume that AC is 8 inches. If it is 8 inches, point P bisects. Remember, bisection means this one is making into two equal halves. Two equal halves. Therefore, if it is 8 inches, then point P divides into two equal halves, which is 4 and 4. I see that diagonal AC is shorter than diagonal BD. So let me assume that BD is a little longer, which is say 10 inches. Don't ask that from where did you get these values. Just I'm assuming that AC is 8 and BD is 10. If it is 10, that is also bisected. Bisected means here 5 on one side of the point and 5 is on the other side of the intersecting point. So don't forget, in a parallelogram, the diagonals bisect each other. In fact, what are the properties of parallelogram are discussed. The same thing will be repeated for most of the points will be repeated. The same for a rectangle, a rhombus, and a square. Okay. So here these questions are going to be easy. Let's see what the next question say. If AE equals to 8, so let me mark it on this one. AE is given as 8 units. And what is the value of EC? Oh, it's funny. It's funny. Because, if you look at the example which we discussed before, AP is 4 units and PC is 4 units. You see that the diagonals are bisecting. If this one is 4 units, this is also 4 units, right? So if this one is 8 units, what's the value of EC? What's the value of EC? Can you guess what is the value of EC? In fact, it's a silly question. I know that it's very, very easy to guess. So what's the value of EC means the value of EC is also 8. So what is the reason behind that means you have to mention, please, you have to mention the point that is in a parallelogram. Please do mention the point, then give the answer. In a parallelogram, diagonals bisect each other. Bisect each. Therefore, I would say that the length of AE equals to length of EC, and I know that length of AE is given as 8 units in the question. Therefore, length of EC is also 8 units. I know that by looking at the question itself, you can answer, but you better show the justification part, how you got the answer. Okay. Now going to the next question, if DE is given, so DE is given as 7x plus 2 and EB is given as 9x minus 6. So let's see where DE is. So DE is this one and EB is this one. Oh my gosh, it's same. So I know that point E bisects AC and BD, and I know that DE equals to EB. But as I mentioned before, you have to justify your answer all the time. You have to justify your answer all the time. So let me write that in a parallel. Oops. Okay, I forgot to take my pen. In a parallelogram, diagonals bisect each other. Diagonals bisect each other. Okay, so length of AE equals to, in fact this is not necessary for us, but just I'm writing AE equals to, my bad, it is EC and oops, okay, and A equals to EC, DE equals to, this is what required for us to solve the question, DE equals to EB. Now, what's the value of DE means just plug in here, which is 7x plus 2, 7x plus 2, and what's the value of EB means that value is to be copied here, 9x minus 6. While solving the algebra, I personally prefer to identify the variables on both the sides, and which is the least of these two. That part we have to consider for elimination. I see that 7x is less than 9x. Therefore, I want to eliminate 7x. If there is no sign, always you can assume that there is positive. And you know how to go for inverse operation, which is subtract 7x on both the sides. Subtract 7x. This is the inverse operation of positive. So 7x, take away 7x, gets cancelled. 2 equals to 9x minus 7x, which is 2x minus 6. Here onwards, it's a very easy calculation for you. So let me cancel out the 6 by inverse operation, positive 6 on both the sides, positive 6 on both the sides. So negative 6, positive 6 gets cancelled. 2x equals to 2 plus 6 is 8. And always don't forget there is an invisible multiplication sign between a constant and a variable, or maybe in layman's language I say that between a number and a letter. Then the inverse operation is division by 2 on both the sides. Then the value of x equals to 8 over 2, that gives me 4. Okay, so any questions on this particular example? As I always mention, in case if you have any questions later on, if it comes to your mind, send an email. Okay, so let me go to the next one. Here, let's summarize. If you take a parallelogram, in a parallelogram, what are the points we discussed quickly? I'll write it here, and then I'll give some questions for you to practice. Okay. So first of all, what is a parallelogram means? It is a quadrilateral. Quadrilateral means, please remember, four-sided polygon. It's a quadrilateral in which point number one, that is opposite sides are equal. This is what we use for solving the problems. They are equal and also parallel. So here I would say that AB parallel to CD and also AB equals to CD. And second pair, you see that AD parallel to BC and AD equals to BC. So this is point number 1. And the second point is, do you want me to remind or can you tell? What's the second point? So the next point is opposite angles of a parallelogram are equal. And the next point is consecutive angles. Maybe sum of this would be better. Sum of consecutive angles is 180 degrees, And the last point which we discussed is diagonals of a parallelogram. Diagonals of a parallelogram bisect each other. That means the point divides into two equal halves. Okay? Any questions? Well, that's it, and let's go for some more questions.